Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of eHeroes. Now, we've talked politics on the show before, but we've never had a political candidate until now. I want to welcome Dan Kowal to the show. And Dan, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Rob, for inviting me. Uh,
You're running for what?
well, I'm running down in Naples, Florida. I'm running for a seat in the county commissioner's seat, what they call District 4,
Okay.
which is the south, considered the southwestern portion of the county, which includes the biggest incorporated portion, which is the city of Naples. And that's the seat I'm running for now as a Republican.
Well, that's great. I mean, we need more people that I think need to run for political office. Now, I've kind of inspired. I was inspired to run years ago, and then I sat down and spent some time volunteering, and I thought, oh my goodness, I can't do this. It was just, it was so chaotic, and I'm like, how can someone do this? But then I've been following you for a while, and I'm like, I think it takes a special type of person to want to do this, to want to help, to keep giving and giving and giving, and you've been kind of giving your whole life to not only the army, and I believe that you were in the police force for a while, and so yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's amazing when you enter in at this behind the scenes. What you see goes on in politics is mind-boggling. But I think that's the problem. The old guard's been in charge of it for a long time, and they've controlled the narrative. And I think it's time for some people that have a patriotic background to step up.
Right.
Because I think originally that's what formed our country were the patriots,
Hmm.
not the politicians. And these guys all had their own careers, their own jobs, and they got into you know becoming leaders in our country to create what it is today. And I think we've lost that. And yeah, like you said, I got out right out of high school. I joined the United States Army. I think I was a young man looking for that structure,
Hmm.
and and once in the army, I realized that it was something that it it fulfilled my and a void in me to have that structure and a discipline and that being a part of a team, the esprit de corps, and that honesty, integrity. I mean, that's in everybody has a story, and a story shapes who you are later on in life. I sit back today, and I never, when I was a teenager in the army, basically 18 years old, I never knew how big and how much of a responsibility it was. I was just following, what I was told to do, and I did it to the best of my ability. But looking back as an adult now, back then, and how important, these young people, the things they do is so important for us and our country and our safety that we just take it for granted sometimes. But as you get older, you learn how to respect it and really reflect back and say, "Wow, you know what? That was something," and you learn from it. And like you said, I kind of like didn't quit there. I got out of the army in December 1989, and went to school. Used my GI Bill. I went to school for criminal justice, and then ended up working in law enforcement, and had a 28-year career that I just finished the last 18 years right here in Naples, Florida, working for the county sheriff's department. And it was very fulfilling, very eye opening, and but for a person like me, once again, that putting others before yourself kind of attitude, that unselfishness. And I lived for that. I didn't know I needed it. I was addicted to it, I guess, in a way. But I guess you can be addicted to worse things, I guess.
Now, I think you and I are about the same age, and we both remember 9/11. I think you were, in the area, when it happened, and but 9/11 kind of reshaped how um, I think we the people became we the government. The government then used 9/11 as this thing to control the people.
Yeah, I was in Washington D.C. My first 10 years of law enforcement, I worked for the federal government, and people probably know now. They probably know it existed, but United States Capitol Police is a branch of our congressional government, federal government, and it had its own law enforcement agency for many, many years. It was established back in like 1920. No, I mean 1828. So it's a really old law enforcement agency, but they had a branch in there called the Dignitary Protection Unit. And what it was you got trained as a special agent in dignitary protection techniques, and you were basically responsible for basically doing the same exact job the Secret Service would do, or the State Department protection branches when protecting the heads of states and things like that. And we were tasked for the Speaker of the House, the majority leaders, and their to protect them basically as security teams. We traveled with them all over the country, and I became part of that. And at the time in 9/11, I was there in Washington D.C., and I'll never forget. We had gotten word of what happened in New York, and I was literally at the Naval Annex building, which is right outside of the Pentagon compound. And I got an alert to get back to the Capitol after we found out that the Twin Towers were hit. And I responded back there. And at the time, we had these Blackberries. We carried Blackberries with us. And that's how we had those and the flip phones with direct talk. And we were told to go ahead and start an evacuation operation. You know, we've seen these in the past as training and things like that, but this was the real thing this time. And we were evacuating leadership, got people out of the Capitol, pretty much evacuated the whole city within an hour. You know, it was all you saw was military and law enforcement walking around the city. And at one point, I remember I was standing in the Capitol building, kind of on the west front area of the Capitol building, while it was empty and just me and other law enforcement officers. And that's when we heard the plane went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And, you know, reflecting back that day and finding out later that that plane was supposed to target the Capitol itself. And, you know, I think it is, you know, Todd Beamer, who was one of the gentlemen that stepped up and looked fear in its face and didn't cave to it. And this wasn't a police officer. This wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a Navy SEAL. He was a regular, everyday guy. He was an American, and he didn't bow down to fear. And I think, in a way, we owe him his life. You know, our lives to him that day. The guys that were in the Capitol and gals. So that was a moment in my life that really, you know, already being a public servant and already serving in the military, it just gave me a little bit more thinking about how, you know, you can't cave into fear, and that's not the American way. We can never cave into fear. You know, people probably heard this now because of the pandemic. You know, fear spreads faster than any other disease, and I think we've witnessed that the last year and a half. That the fear was bigger than the actual disease itself.
The government has very much overstepped their authority, and you know, it has put that fear into so many people. And I just I look around at my neighbors, at my friends, and people I went to high school and college with, and they're all scared, you know, and they're like, well, we're moving down to Florida because it's a freer state, you know, but you know, I look at the news and you know, now the government wants to sue all these states that want to be freer, which to
Yeah.
me just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It's a complete opposite of everything that our whole country's based on. It's like we went into Bizarro world, like an episode of, you know, like a Seinfeld episode where everything's flip flopped. You know this, that I grew up in Pittsburgh. That's where I grew up. That's where my roots are from. And you know, I was sitting there watching the football game the other day, and of course Ben got benched because he tested positive for COVID. And I started thinking of hundreds and hundreds of NFL players that were told they couldn't play that Sunday because they tested positive for COVID.
Yeah,
But then we can't name one player that died from COVID,
yeah, you know, or
right?
the police forces all over America, and they're being told that either take the jab or lose the job. To me,
Yeah.
that's not fair at all.
Nobody cared when you were out there when we were really didn't know what the pandemic really was or how deadly it really was the first couple of weeks, they had no problem of us being out there. And I was out there myself, face to face with protesters, face to face with people fighting over toilet paper in Walmarts. And they didn't care that you didn't have a jab then. Now they care.
Yeah.
And that's
And
pretty sad.
and
Pretty
and
sad.
the government right now with the military, they're telling them they have to have the jab or they're going to be, kicked out of the military. Imagine having all your years training and now all of a sudden you're being kicked out because you refuse a jab. And it to me it's yeah, I mean it is. It's bizarro world.
Yeah.
And so we need more people like you that want to step up and fight.
Yeah, we can't make decisions on passion. We have to make decisions with reason.
Yeah.
We have to look at what's the bigger picture. I mean, violating people's rights, their right to freedom, should outweigh any decision that they're trying to make through this basically totalitarian government they're trying to push on us. That you have no say over.
Right.
I mean, they're using branches of the government that aren't supposed to even be used for, like OSHA. OSHA is there designed to protect you from your employer, not to
Right.
protect you from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not even the vessel to even be used or the mechanism to be used
Right.
in this manner.
Yeah, OSHA is now forcing employers or oversighting employers and saying, "Hey, look, if you don't have your people jabbed, you're going to get fined." That is outside the bounds of OSHA.
Yeah. Yeah, OSHA's supposed to make sure you have all your people aren't exposed to certain chemicals, work hazard, that fall under, dangerous situations or unsafe practices while performing jobs. It's not to get involved in people's personal health,
Right.
you know.
So, how will you take all the experiences that you've learned over the years and apply them to county commissioner seat in Collier County?
Well, if you don't know, we had a little issue here. There's 5 commissioners in the
Oh,
county,
that's too
and
much.
those five, the 5 commissioners pretty much oversee from budgetary things to new projects to development and just about any aspect that any other like mayor or city planner, but it falls upon these 5 commissioners, and it's basically a majority rules.
Mm.
So 3 is a majority. So right now we had a few commissioners in over this that really exposed themselves through the pandemic, and they did things that basically shut down everybody's personal lives
Mhm.
through 3 votes. And that it it bothered me, because I felt it was overstepping their authority, because they definitely went against everything I believe in, and I think a majority of people here in Collier County believe in that. That they weren't. It wasn't their place to violate people's rights to freedom of movement, freedom of choice, and
Mhm.
those things. So it definitely, when I become a county commissioner, I'm going to use the basis of our Constitution on all the decisions I make.
Mm.
It just that's the way it has to be done. And county government, local government, their job is not to hedge bets on private industries and things like that. Their job is to provide first protection of your rights,
Mhm.
then protect you because you can't provide your own law enforcement, you can't provide your own fire and safety and EMS. That's the second big responsibility. And then the infrastructure and the ability to maintain a good sound infrastructure to move people from point A to point B with the least amount of danger and the least amount of congestion. And that's going to be one of the biggest tasks coming up right now in Collier County because, believe it or not, it's like paradise down here. We got a lot of people who want to move down here, and we're seeing a lot of people from the blue cities and blue states that are just packing up and coming down. And I owe a lot to that to our governor, Governor DeSantis.
Mhm.
He's really made the rest of the country wake up and see what he's doing here. And that is it's a big draw for people to come to our area.
Yeah.
And it's something that has to be managed, and it has to be managed, reasonably in a way we can do it. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of people out there want to just put a wall up. I said, but what are we, East Germany? We can't put a wall up. We're going to become a communist county. You can't do that. I mean, we're
Right.
constitutional conservatives.
Right.
What if somebody did that 6 years ago when you wanted to move here? It's not fair. If
Right.
somebody has the ability and the means to come here and invest in their future and want to live here, they should have that right just like anybody else. But it's our responsibility as leaders here to make sure it works in the right.
I you mentioned rights, and right on your website it says protector of your rights. It doesn't say protector of your feelings. It says protector of your rights, and I think that we've become this country that takes feelings over rights, and we've become so weak, and other countries look at us and going, oh my goodness, America, and it's just terrible. And we have these red states versus blue states, and to me, we should all be American people. We should all still look at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and say, hey, look, this is what it's all about. And
Yeah.
it just seems like half the country doesn't care anymore.
And that's we have to wake everybody up, and everybody has to kind of come together on that and say, yeah, listen, this is what makes us who we are.
Right.
There's nobody. Listen, there's no other new world out there. This is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
We're not all going to get on a boat and find some undiscovered land here on Earth that we can all start over again.
Right.
This is it. Our forefathers came here, the pilgrims came here, and this was the last shining light on the hill. I think Ronald Reagan said that. This is it.
Yeah.
And we can't let it change. We have to keep it what they built and what they escaped from to come here. We have people that literally will get on a homemade rubber raft in Haiti, put their whole family on it, and hope the currents in the Atlantic Ocean will draw them across and they land somewhere close enough to a Florida beach that they can make it to this country, not knowing if they'll ever make it here.
Yeah.
And that's the drive of freedom. They know this is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other place that happens but
Right.
here.
Yeah.
And we can never let that go. We have to come together as a country. We have to make sure we all revert back to those documents and say, listen, come on, wake up. This
Mm-hmm.
is what we need to do. They've tried all these other things everywhere else. There's never been a country but brought out of poverty through socialism. Never in the history of the world. Only through capitalism has people ever come out of poverty.
Wow. Yeah. Agreed. So what's your goal? I mean, what do you want to achieve?
My chiefs get this light out of my face.
I was waiting for that.
The sun is coming. It's bad right now. There you go. I'm trying to make a good show for you. All right.
And I tell people every episode there's always some type of mistake that happens, but that's great because we're human. Everything happens. But as county commissioner, what are the things that you want to tackle? What's kind of the agenda you have in mind?
Well, we have to definitely. Tourism is one of our biggest industries here,
right.
and the clean water is very important. It's been a problem. In 2018, we had a really, really bad episode with the releases at Lake Okeechobee, where we had a lot of algae that bloomed. And when the algae moves through the brackish water, it ended up in the Gulf. It created a lot of algae blooms and red tide, things that were pretty nasty. I mean, people were going to the beach and there'd be 100,000 fish dead, just floating up onto the beach. It was not a good experience.
Right.
That's something we need to really address. I know there's a few commissioners in Lee County that have taken it personal. At least one of them's taken a personal, and he's been going to the Army Corps engineers and talking to them and working with them on the release schedules, because at one point they were going to do a 0 release to the east and a 100% release to the west. Well, we're on the west, and that wouldn't have been good.
Mm-hmm.
And some people think it's political because they're trying to make Governor DeSantis look bad, and they might be taking their orders from Washington. But that's for another story. But that's one issue that we need to address, and we need to go to the source of the problem.
Hmm.
But in here in Collier County, there's two more sides to it, and our wastewater runoff, it ends up in our bays, and that causes a grayish to our water and some issues too, that some bad odors. So these kind of things that when tourism is your number one industry, these are things you have to address. We have to get ahead of. I don't know if in the past the commissioners, in my history, my lifetime, I've always been a problem solver. People bring me their problems, and I try to figure out how to fix them, and that's just comes with my history and what I've done, in law enforcement and just in life.
Right.
But we have issues. Some of the county in Golden Gate City, there's a large amount of residential properties that are still on septic tanks,
Hmm.
and there's different things we need to address. I think it's an educational thing too, because we have a lot of people that are bilingual, that speak only Spanish here, that rent a lot of property in these different areas in the county and the cities. And I think they don't understand that there's certain things you can do and you can't do when you're using a septic system.
Right.
And I think I've seen it on a level where I go to the worker. I go to the man out there that's working and works with this stuff. I don't go to the bureaucrat and ask them for an explanation, because they're gonna sugarcoat it, or they're gonna try to figure out a way to get more money for the department.
Right.
I go to the guys out there that have to dig up these leach fields and things like that and ask them, what's the problem? And they tell me point blank, the people don't understand. They can't use powdered detergents. They can't put grease down the drains. And no knock on Hispanic people or the Haitian people to rent these properties, but they don't understand that.
Or
Where they come from, they
yeah,
didn't have these kind of systems in place.
right. Or they don't have the money to fix them, because to try to replace a septic system and put it, into the county water supply is very costly.
Yes, very much so. And they, I think it could be an educational thing too. I mean, we could just do a campaign with our waste management, and send out flyers and bulletins in both Creole and in Spanish, to explain to them, because what happens is that clogs up the leach fields,
Right.
and when the leach fields clogged up and we hit the rainy season, it comes up to the ground. It's
Hmm.
not percolating like it's designed to do in a septic system. And when it comes to the ground, then it runs off into our storm drains into our canal system, and our canal system into our bays. So, it does. It's another aspect of what causes some of our issues with our water quality. So there's a lot of things, and I don't know that the other commissioners in the past or have ever even looked at it that way. But these are the kind of things I'm bringing to the table. So I'm going to bring this kind of looking from the outside and looking from the ground up to
Right.
fix these problems.
And I know that one issue is the Second Amendment. People have been up in arms, figuratively and literally. And it's been one of our inherent rights for 200 plus years, but they want to take it away from us. And as a former law enforcement officer, and military, you've had guns all your life. I mean, you've always used them. And I believe that every citizen should have the ability to own one. They can choose not to own one, but it should always be that right. Um, so, I mean, I think you're pro Second Amendment. I believe that that's just something that you've always naturally been. But how do you kind of convince somebody that's on the fence?
Well, I'm very pro Second Amendment, and I believe the Second Amendment is the reason we have the other amendments.
Mhm.
Because if it wasn't for that one, our forefathers never would have had the ability to create the document that we all
Right.
live by today. And that it's very important. And a lot of people, you'll hear on the other side, they'll say, "Oh, who needs a gun to, who needs a semi-automatic gun to hunt rabbits?" Or some ridiculous
Right.
comment. Okay, if they really read the Second Amendment, it has nothing to do about you having a hunting rifle.
Right.
It's about you protecting yourself against a tyrannical government,
Right.
your own government that's supposed to work for you. You know, I pray to God that it never gets to that in this country.
Right.
But that's what our forefathers placed it in there for, is that we didn't fall under a tyrannical government that wants to take away your rights. And it was
But you
given.
know, we and not to put blame where blame is, well, let's just blame it because it is. You know, we have a government that it fears the people. And you know, at the very beginning of the Biden administration, they put a border wall around the White House. They feared an insurrection, not from Trump, not from anybody else, but from the people because they were afraid to take away their Second Amendment right. That right there tells you all you need to know. You know,
Yeah.
you know, the government is afraid of the people, and that's why they're putting all this power back. You know, they want to try to take this power away from the people, and the moment you take away the Second Amendment is the moment the government wins.
Well, they're afraid of the people because they knew that they were going after something that they didn't have a right to take away.
Right.
They didn't have a right to take away. It's in any of the rights. Your first, the Bill of Rights. Those are God given.
Yeah.
Those are your rights just because you exist as a human being.
Hmm.
You know, and they don't have the power to take those away. And they knew they were doing something that they didn't have. They were going to try to do something that they don't have a right to do.
Right.
And then the only way you defend yourself is basically like you said. They preempted an attack on themselves. You know, but it's funny because you heard even after the January 6th thing, they all came out and says, "Oh, our government was never in fear," or, terror. But then they put the barbed wire fences up and
Yeah.
brought in the extra. They were scared.
Yeah.
They're very scared. And it's not to say it's the right or wrong thing. I mean, you should never. What happened that day, I can't speak for. I wasn't there, and I don't know the exact details of what went down. Um, I can just only tell you from working there,
Hmm.
being there during demonstrations, because Washington D.C. there's always planned demonstrations. Every weekend there's probably
Right.
one somewhere in the city, and we've always had a contingency plan for it. Even if we didn't think it was ever really going to amount to anything, but we always prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
Right.
And knowing people that are still on the Hill that work with me side by side, in in the aspect that I worked there in, I was basically told through a grapevine over a coffee that they had no contingency plan prior to, and they knew there was going to be 300,000 people on the mall that day. If we have 400 people scheduled for a demonstration somewhere around the Capitol, we would have a contingency plan. We'd have our guys with the riot gear, all that stuff, sitting on bags. They call it sitting on bags. They put them up somewhere. And if you feel you need extra, you bring in Virginia troopers, Maryland troopers. Everybody sits on bags. They hang around for 12 hours, eat coffee and donuts, until it all passes, and they move on. They go back to their jurisdictions, and you don't worry about it. But from what I understand, they had none of that,
Right.
and it
I
just
mean,
seemed odd to me. It seems
and
very odd to me.
I've been to Washington on a couple March for Lives over the last 20 years, and I can tell you that I think there was they were very peaceful, but it just lately they've been making all these marches about oh my God, they're gonna rush the government. It's not like that, but
Now,
the media,
majority of the time, the people that schedule these rallies and these protests, they're not the problem. It's the counter protesters that show up
right?
unannounced. Those are the ones that create the problems.
Yeah,
And
and then the media,
well,
goes
yeah, they
there,
just lump it all in together
right?
and saying this is, they should never did it, or that's their fault because they're, white supremacists or whatever, and they don't even know. They have no clue.
Right.
They're good at jumping the gun for their narrative, and that's another problem. But that's for another day, I guess. Because I'll be honest with you, I think that these 24-hour news networks like CNN and CNBC and even Fox,
Yeah.
listen, they're in it for the money.
Yeah.
They're in it for selling advertising space. They get their audience. Everybody has an audience, and they got to cater to it. And
Mhm.
it's all about money. It ain't about the truth.
Right.
And that's why I think there should be a disclaimer on every one of them shows when they're on, saying this does not really fall under the First Amendment. This is not freedom of press. This is
Right.
only an opinion.
Yeah.
These aren't true.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. And if they can't, and if nobody has the guts up in Congress to pass a law and say, either you can't make a profit off your shows for selling advertising because you're going to tell the truth,
Mhm.
or if you're not going to tell the truth, then you have to have the disclaimers
Right.
right before it comes on the air.
Now,
But they don't ever have the guts to do that. They don't have it.
so let me ask you, and this is one of those questions where you can say, hey, yeah, this is how it is, and I know as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that I have to do, come marketing, all the stuff that I need to do to get clients to come in. But as a county commissioner, as a politician, what do you need to do to get people to vote for you? I mean, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people just don't know about.
Well, first and foremost, people got to know who I am. They got to see my name. They got to see my face recognition, and they got to, equate those two together. Because all they're going to see is a name on a ballot when
Right.
August comes around, August 23rd for the primary, and they have to see that name and they have to associate it with me, the person that they're basically getting sick of seeing. You know, but it's pretty much what I have to do because I'm running against an incumbent in a primary. I'm a primary out another Republican, but we use that term loosely with a few people on our county commission. But this is what you have to do. And it has to be done on every level right now. We have to do this on every level of our government, from small school boards all the way up to senators and US Senate. When we find out they're not true Republicans, not true conservatives, constitutional conservatives, we have to primary them out.
Mhm.
It's hard. I know it's going to be hard. It's a hard hill to climb, but it has to be done. Look at the 13 Republicans that came out and voted for that stimulus package.
Yeah.
They should be primaried out the minute they have the ability to put somebody up against them. So that's the thing. We're not going to beat the Democrats head to head on a lot of things, but we can't beat ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we don't have true people in there that truly believe in what they should stand for in the Republican Party, then we're never going to win.
Right.
We're never gonna take this country back to where it should be. And that's what's important. And for me, on a local level, I have to. It comes down to raising money.
Mhm.
Something It's very hard for me to ask for anything because I've always been a giver. I've always been a person that's always put theirself or even their life on the line for other people.
Mhm.
And it's something I had to learn how to do on the fly.
Right.
Is
So
actually
yeah,
ask.
you went from behind the scenes, serving in the army, serving in the law enforcement. Now you have to brand yourself and put yourself, face forward out there so that people see you on, billboards and websites and all this stuff. And to me, that's the kind of the ultimate 180. You go
Yeah.
from, behind the scenes where very few know you, and now your face is everywhere. And I think that's people don't realize that there's a cost to that. There is a cost because people are donating and helping your cause. They want you to be elected. And I think people correlate this. Oh my God, they're spending so much money. No, people are donating so that you can get your message across to other people.
Yeah, and then people don't realize that when they see that you're raising money and you're outraising your opponent, which I can happily say that my opponent started a few months before I did, and in one short month, I've outraised the incumbent already by almost a whole third. When we
Hmm.
did our report, we report once a month, and it comes out the following 10 days after that month, by the 10th of the following month. And we did really well. I mean, in 1 month, we caught up and surpassed. And what that shows me is there's actually people out there believing me
Hmm.
because every dollar represents a vote,
Right.
you know,
Oh,
and
to
then
me, I mean, to me, there's you're the ultimate hero. I mean, you served in the service, and you know, and then in the police force, and you know, you're taking all that experience. You're taking the you know, it's a lifetime of helping, and now it's just this is an evolution. I've been seeing a lot more former military, you know, running for political office because I think that it's needed. You know, we
Yeah,
need strategy. We need, you know, people that have, you know, those life experiences to come in and help lead, you know, lead us into the future.
yeah. It, look what just happened. I think there was six former Navy SEALs that just
Yeah.
threw their names in the race for different congressional races throughout the country.
Yeah.
We are seeing a lot more, and I think it's coming down to that point.
Right.
I think people are starting to draw a line in the sand. They're saying enough's enough. You know, I don't need. Listen, I retired back in September, and I decided to do this because I felt I still had gas in the tank,
Right.
and I still wanted to do something to leave this a better place for my children and everybody else's children and their children.
Yeah.
Because this, I was handed a hell of a country from my
Yeah.
grandparents. Probably they called the greatest generation ever. You
Hmm.
know, they fought in the world wars, and you know, and they didn't vote for socialists. They killed socialists.
Right.
You know, they didn't. You know, that was a total different mindset.
Yeah.
But I think at one point, I think these socialists and these real hard left liberals realized that they couldn't come out publicly and run an office in this country
Right.
because those were the people that were the voters, were our grandparents and our parents, and they knew they would never win with you know, with that socialist background.
Right.
So what they did is they went underground and they started working on our children, working on universities. These other politicians that got put in, and they were appointed to heads of departments. You know, things, bureaucratic positions that aren't voted out.
Right.
They knew that they couldn't just run in office because they would get exposed once they were in. They would get voted out the next election. So they were more into getting positions in departments of the government that they knew they had lifelong careers in.
Right.
And then over and over, you saw more and more of these departments become more liberal.
Hmm.
You know, even look at our FBI. I mean, I know a lot of great FBI agents. I've worked with, you know, different task force stuff like that, and that do great work, man. I mean, great work. But I think their upper echelons got kind of tainted over the years,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and it showed. It's really showing now, and more of this comes out with this investigation. We're starting to hear a little bit about, but once again, Washington politics. I have a feeling that they keep waiting long enough so the statute of limitation on these things runs out, and then people like Hillary Clinton that can never be arrested.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing. It's all strategic. You know, it's
Yeah.
sad but true. And it'll come out after it's too late
Yeah.
how crooked all this stuff was.
So how do how do people, you know, help you? Is it just people in Collier County that can donate, or can people all over the world donate to your cause?
Well, not around the world. You have to be a U.S. citizen.
Well, if you're a
No,
military
yeah,
stationed in,
yeah, no, yeah. You just have to be a U.S. citizen, and we have a website. It's www.vote4dankowal. That's spelled out FOR. Vote for Dan Kowal. And we have, you know, just like anything else, a contribute button. You can go and contribute. You can, and if you're locally and you hear the podcast, you can volunteer to do door knocking with us, which we're going to start here in December, probably second week of December. We're going to hit it hard. We're going to go to neighborhoods and knock on doors. We're going to hand out pamphlets, do door hangers, and then of course some of these gated communities. I'm trying to get people that live within the gated communities to have meet and greet parties with me,
mhm,
you know, at their homes or their little clubhouses or whatever, you know, venue they want to hold them in. And so I can get my name out there and see who I really am, you know.
and there's a lot of gated communities in
Yeah, there's
Florida.
a lot of gated communities in my district, but there's a limit in the commissioner race. You're allowed to donate. Any entity or person can donate to $1,000, and anything over $100, it just has to capture some information about you, like your job, if you're retired, still working, you know, things like that, an address. But yeah, I mean, anyone in the United States of America can send me a contribution. And like I said, so I know even a business, but it can't
Mm.
succeed. You can't go over that $1,000.
And for all those watching this on YouTube, I'll put Dan's URL below, and you can go to his website. You can actually download Dan's resume. You can learn more about him, and I think there's a get involved button. You can learn more about Dan, and if you're in Collier County, go out and help and get those pamphlets out there and help get Dan elected, because we need more, not only heroes, but we need more people that want to protect you as a citizen. So Dan, thanks for being here, and this is what makes you an e-hero, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Hey, this is Rob Anspach. See you next time.
Thanks, Rob.